Welcome to this class for the follicular phase of the cycle in the season of fall or autumn. So as women, we have 4 different distinct phases that run about a 29-day cycle. We have our inner spring, which is the 7 to 10 days after menstruation, and that's again considered inner spring or our follicular phase. And then we move into ovulation for the next few days, and that's considered our inner summer. Following that, we have our inner fall or the luteal phase, the week leading up to menstruation again, and then menstruation is our inner winter. So these inner seasons are cycling all the time for us. Even if you're not currently menstruating, these cycles move on a more subtle energetic space following the phases of the moon. So if you aren't currently menstruating, you can follow along with these classes along with the moon phases. So your inner winter would be at the new moon, and then the first quarter moon would be your follicular phase, the full moon ovulation, that waning moon, your luteal phase, and then again moving into a new moon once again for menstruation. So those are the inner seasons, and as we get through more and more classes, we'll discuss those seasons more, and if you have any questions about any of them, please feel free to comment below. Today we're going to focus on the follicular phase, the inner spring, during the season of fall externally. So as I'm recording this, we just recently had the fall equinox, and where I am in the northern hemisphere, I'm noticing the seasons begin to change, the colors of the leaves are changing, leaves are starting to fall, we're feeling cooler weather, and so we can adjust our practice accordingly. So even though you may be in your inner spring, which is a time of newness and creativity and expression, and still some gentleness in the practice, especially those first few days after menstruation, we slowly begin to build up our inner reserves, and then we can really go all out during the summer phase. But in fall, that energy is a little bit more subdued. So we need a little bit more grounding, slower movements, deeper breaths, and this practice isn't meant to get in a good sweat or a good workout. It is meant to circulate the life force throughout the body and to help you feel rejuvenated and relaxed yet alert and energized. Sometimes that happens by moving slower and doing less. And so you may find that these classes are quite different than a traditional class you would take in a studio or especially in a gym. And I would say just give it a try, be open to it, and notice how the body feels after, the body and the mind. My hope is that your body will feel super honored, and your mind will have a chance to come out of that perpetual fight or flight that we find ourselves in and really calm down, and maybe you'll find new insights, clarity, creativity come through. So that is my hope for us today, to honor both the inner and the outer cycles, and know that more classes are on the way. So if you're not in this phase of your cycle or you're living in the southern hemisphere, more classes are coming for you, I promise. For now, just take a moment to set your space. Make sure it's as quiet and calm as possible, free of distraction for the next 30 minutes or so, and grab a blanket. And if you have them, some blocks. You don't need them, but they're nice to have just for some extra support in a couple of the poses that we'll be doing. So grab what you need to feel nice and supported and grounded and safe to turn inward for these next few moments, and I'll meet you on the mat. Okay, so we're actually going to begin supine, lying down on our backs, and we're just going to start by checking in with ourselves and breathing. So it's a little cool here where I'm recording, so I'm going to grab a blanket and cover myself up, just the bottom half here. Go ahead and cover yourself, put some socks on or a sweater on if you feel a little bit more cozy that way, and then just join me lying down on the mat. Making sure your hair is out of the way, So your neck can extend but not overextend, letting the natural arch in the lower back remain, so not pressing down. And you can let the arms fall open, hands, palms facing toward the ceiling for a gesture of receptivity, or if you need a little bit more comforting today, you can place one hand over the heart space and one hand over the womb space. And just send nice, loving, nurturing energy to these spaces within you. And just begin to breathe. Sigh out the day, the thoughts moving through the mind, wherever you found yourself before you sat down for your practice. And turn your attention toward you fully. First, taking notice of the physical body. Notice where you may be holding any tension. Maybe softening the muscles of the face, parting the teeth and letting the jaw soften. Letting the shoulders soften down toward the mat. Allowing the belly to soften so you can take full oxygenated breaths to move that energy through the whole of the body. Letting the glutes, the buttocks relax, the thighs, front to back, side to side. Even the muscles in the feet, noticing if there's any clenching. And with each breath, see if you can gently release that and move into a greater state of calm, relaxed awareness. Good. Getting comfortable with this stillness and this silence. Just notice how the mind responds to that. Notice if any emotional energy is coming up for you. And try not to hook into that right now, not to investigate it or try to come up with a solution. Just become the witness, the observer of your experience. Maybe you begin to see this just as old energy that's passing through, releasing. So you can move into this now moment with greater clarity and receptivity. Carrying this with you, will gently begin to move the body. You can open the arms if they were on your belly and your heart, wiggling the toes and the fingers. And then gently roll to your right side, so I'm going to roll away from you. And pause here for just a moment, and then gently coming up to a seated position. And so I'm going to set the blanket off to the side. Feel free to do that yourself, or if you find yourself on a hard floor, you can put it right under where your knees will be for some extra support. We're going to come into all fours position, tabletop. Knees right under the hips, shoulders right over the wrists. You can keep the tops of the feet planted down like I have, or feel free to tuck the toes under. And we're just going to begin to move with the breath through cat-cow. So inhaling, arching the back, opening the heart, lengthening the spine. And exhale, turning inward, releasing the back of the neck. Inhaling, moving forward. And exhale, drawing in. Pay attention to how this movement pattern feels in your body right now. And notice what your body is asking for. So if it likes this pace, this rhythm, you can continue here. If you notice that your body's wanting some circular motions, go ahead and start moving in that direction. And they can be as small or as big as your body wants to move right now. Switch the direction of the circles if you haven't already. Feel free to exhale out loud. Again, just discharging that old static energy, moving it through the body. And then just settle in here. Pause for a moment in this stillness. Then we're going to walk the knees back just a step or two, tuck the toes under, and come up into our first down dog. So for this first one, take the feet a little bit wider than hip width apart. You can take them as wide as the mat if you'd like. Bend the knees and send the hips straight up toward the sky, and keep the knees bent on this one. Let the head, let gravity move it down toward the mat. Shoulders rolling onto the back and turning toward the body. And breathing here. Getting upside down for maybe the first time today. First time in a few days if you're just coming off of menstruation. Can give you a fresh perspective. Good, and if you'd like to pedal the feet, go ahead, walk it out. You can shift the hips from side to side. Remember, this is your practice, and this practice, maybe more than others, is an opportunity to check in with your body and begin to honor how it would like to move. So rather than forcing it to move in certain patterns, really honoring that creative expression. And then we'll walk the feet about hip width apart. And looking up toward the front of the mat, we'll begin to tiptoe the toes to the front of the mat, bending the knees and folding forward. If you'd like to, you can grab opposite elbows and gently sway from side to side, releasing the low back, releasing the neck a bit more. Good. Hands come to the shins. Inhale, come up halfway. And exhale, fold. We'll do this a couple more times. Inhaling, coming up halfway, lengthening through the spine. And exhale, fold. One more inhale, lengthen. Just starting off slowly and gently in our practice. And exhale, fold. Keeping that bend in the knees, begin to gently roll yourself up to standing. Inhaling, taking a full breath and gently opening the heart. And exhale, gather that energy into the heart and then into the womb space. This is a time of replenishment, of restoration. So being intentional about where we place our energy can be really powerful. Good. Let's take an inhale here. Arms reach up above the head and exhale, swan dive forward. Keeping a gentle bend in the knees, inhale, lengthen forward. Exhale, place the hands and step your left foot back. So take a moment to make sure that the right knee is right over the ankle, not any further. And then you can drop that back knee down. You can keep the toes, the back toe tucked, or put it flat on the mat. I've been liking it flat on the mat lately. And then we're going to inhale into low lunge. So rolling the shoulders down the back, drawing the ribs in just gently so you begin to feel that nice stretch in that left hip. And if you'd like to take that just a bit deeper, you can take your right hand, grab your left wrist, and lean toward the right. Oh yeah, that'll open up the whole of that front left quad hip area. And notice here if there's any clenching or gripping, and if you could just softening the shoulders a bit. Grounding into the feet beneath you, feeling rooted and supported. We're going to inhale back up to center, place the hands down, and we're going to heel toe that front foot to the outer edge of the mat. Walk that right hand inside of the right foot, and walk your left knee back just an inch or two, and coming down into lizard lunge. So you can stay here if that's where the body is willing to be today. stay. If you'd like to go a little bit deeper, maybe coming down onto your forearms, that's great too. We haven't warmed up a whole lot just yet, so don't force or push the hips any deeper than they want to go. The feminine is all about honoring and moving with what's present. So see if you can practice that. Try that out. Softening the shoulder blades, allowing the heart to move down toward the mat. Breathing into this pelvic area that often gets tight and locked up, letting some blood and circulation flow through there. If you'd like to lift the back knee up, you can. I'm going to keep my knee down. I'm finding in the fall it's nice to have a lot of contact with the mat. It's very grounding. Good, and then we'll walk the hands back up, heel toe that right foot back to the low lunge position. And then we're just going to straighten the front leg into a half split and fold over. Now here again, don't push or force anything. Our bodies are always changing depending on the phase of the cycle that we're in and the season that we're in. So in fall, it's common to have more airiness, feeling more ungrounded, and also more stiffness in the muscles and the joints. So we move a little bit slower and let the body warm up slowly. Good, bending back into that front knee, place the hands and step back into plank. Pausing here in plank, making sure the shoulders are right over the wrists, the navel is drawing up toward the spine, and then we'll drop the knees, chest, and chin. Inhaling, coming into a baby cobra, and exhale, lower. We're going to do this a couple of times just to open up the front body. Inhaling, breathing in the new, lengthening through the spine, and exhaling, folding. And take a moment here just to try something. Lift the right foot up and extend it back as far as you can, set it back down. Lift the left foot up, extend it back as far as you can, set it down. Create some space in those hips. And then inhale, lengthen up. And the point isn't to see how high up you can get. It's lengthening the spine forward. So we're stretching from front to back. So see if that makes a difference for you at all in how Cobra feels for you. Maybe making it a bit more spacious. And then exhale, lower. Coming up onto hands and knees, tucking the toes. Coming back into down dog. Just take a breath here. You can sigh it out. Shake the head, yes and no. Good. Pedaling the knees if you'd like. And then just taking a moment of stillness again to connect with feeling grounded, steady. And then we'll inhale, looking forward, step the left foot through, coming down onto the back knee for low lunge on the other side. Inhaling, coming up. Good. And breathe here, and maybe you just notice, just check in and see if this side feels different than the right side did. How does that right hip feel? This left quad? Drawing the shoulders down, lengthening through the crown of the head. And if you'd like to open the heart just a bit, maybe look up. That's perfectly fine here. If you're feeling a little bit more unbalanced and unsteady, just look down toward the mat today. Good. And we'll place the hands down and heel toe that left foot to the outer corner of the mat, outer edge. Walk the right knee back just a step or two and come into that lizard lunge on the other side. I know these are some of the most uncomfortable poses for a lot of people, but it is so good for our pelvic area, for our hips to have this slow opening, this nice movement of blood and oxygen circulating through here. So much goes on in this area for us as women. And just remember, you do not need to come down onto the forearms. You can stay up on the hands like this. Not a problem at all. This is a practice of, again, honoring the body, loving on the body, changing those patterns from constantly punishing and berating our bodies to loving and really honoring and listening to what they need. Good, and then we'll heel toe the left foot back into low lunge position and begin to straighten that left leg, flexing the toe. And if it feels good to stay here, stay here. If you have your blocks, you can always come up onto the blocks, just bringing the floor a little closer to you. Just like this. And if you'd rather not, you can keep the hands on the floor and begin to lean forward. And again, obviously the left hamstring is working here, is beginning to stretch and open. So where can you find the counterbalance of relaxation? Maybe you can relax the shoulders down. Relax the muscles of the face. Relaxing the neck. Good, and then bending back into that left knee, placing the hands, stepping the right foot forward to meet the left and fold. Inhale, coming up halfway. And exhale, folding forward. Inhale, slowly rising up, reaching up. And exhale, bringing the hands back to heart center and back to the womb space. And just taking a moment here each time we pause in mountain pose to check in, to notice how the body's feeling. What's shifting? What are you noticing since the beginning of the practice? Good. Grounding into all four corners of the feet. Nice gentle bend in the knees. We'll inhale, arms above the head, and exhale, swan dive forward. Inhale, coming up halfway, and exhale, stepping the left foot back to about a 45-degree angle. We're going to be coming into warrior one. So bending into that right knee right over the ankle, and when you're ready, lifting up into warrior one. Taking a moment here to set the hips so that right hip is pulling back, left hip is moving forward, but again, not forceful. It can feel like physically you're not moving at all, but energetically you're intentioning to square yourself with the front of the mat. Drawing the ribs in and lengthening up. Good, nice, slow, grounded, steady movements. And we're going to come into warrior two from here. So you can heel toe that front foot. Back foot comes to even with the back edge of the mat. And then bend back into that front right knee. The knee tracks right between the second and the third toe. And breathing here, lengthening through both arms. So we're lengthening out as well as up. Really expansive opening pose. The front heel is squeezing toward the back arch, so we've got this gentle warming sensation between the thighs here, as if we were trying to bunch the middle of our mat. But again, all of these movements are very subtle and energetic, not like a forcing, but just like, okay, I feel contact with my feet. Okay, I feel them energetically moving toward one another. Good, and then we're going to take the back hand, place it on the hamstrings, and come into reverse warrior. Gently opening the heart. Again, not straight back, but more up toward the sky. Beautiful. Inhale, coming out of that, and exhale into side angle pose. Now, if this feels like way too much for that front leg, you can place the back hand on the hip and place that front forearm right onto the thigh. Same action, you're getting the same movement of energy through the body. So find what feels best for your body today, even if this is your 1000th yoga practice, or maybe it's your first practice. Doesn't matter. The practice is always tuning into the body right where you are right now and honoring that. Good. Good. Now from here we're going to come into triangle pose. So some people need their feet just a little bit closer together than they are for side angle. So feel free to slide that front foot back just a little bit. And then you're going to open the hips coming into triangle. Now this is deeply into the hips now. So if you would like, you can place a block on the outer edge of your right foot. Brings the mat just a little closer to you, gives you a little bit more lift and a bit more opening. Beautiful. From here, we're going to move into half moon. So this is a balance one, and again, if you want to have your block right out in front of you, you can do that. And we're slowly going to press up into half moon. Now this is a pose that takes some work because there's a lot going on. There's a bit of a twist, there's a standing position in this bottom leg, and then a balancing position, right? The top half of us is floating. So this is a good one to practice with, experiment with. If it looks like this today, that's perfectly fine. If you want to have both hands down, staying in more of like a low warrior 3 or standing split, that's perfectly fine as well. But this can be a really nice one to begin to, again, open up that pelvic area following menstruation. Okay, and I've kept us here long enough. So I'm going to come down into a standing split. So walking your hands next to that front right foot and folding toward the shin. And once you've got your fold, you can begin to lift that left leg up just a little bit more for a deeper stretch. Again, this is an opportunity to release the neck, drawing the shoulders away from the ears. Good. And then we'll plant that back foot back down. And we're actually going to come into pigeon pose on the right leg from here. So bending that front knee, lengthening out through the back toes. If you'd like, you can place a blanket or a pillow right underneath this knee or the hip on the right side. Gives you a little bit more support. You can also place the blanket underneath this left hip if that helps. Good, so just finding the position that feels good in your body today. Maybe you stay right here. And notice I have my foot anchored down like this. You can also pull it in if the hip isn't willing to open up that much today. So the top of the foot is down on the mat, and it's right about in line with my left hip point. Staying here, or you can begin to slowly walk yourself down towards the mat. Maybe you place a block underneath your forehead. And just finding that nice middle ground between getting some stretch and expansion in the body and allowing there to be simultaneous relaxation. So if you're noticing that your breath is short, but you can't breathe, back off. Try a gentler version of the pose. Your body's going to get so much more out of it. And when we slow down like this in a pose, it's a great opportunity to check in with the other aspects of the practice. Noticing where the mind is, the quality of emotion that's present. Noticing how deep the breath can go. We'll slowly walk our hands back toward the front leg, setting the block off to the side. You can move the blanket out from underneath you if you had it. And we're just gonna come back into down dog. So however you find yourself, back to down dog is perfectly fine. Just take a moment here, maybe you rock forward and back, side to side. And notice the difference between the right side and the left side. And inhale, look forward. Exhale, begin to walk the toes toward the front of the mat. Keeping them hips width apart. Inhale, lengthen halfway. And exhale, fold forehead to the shins. Keeping that gentle bend in the knees. Inhale, lengthen up. And exhale, hands come to heart center. And maybe move them down to the womb space once again. We've got a second side to do. So inhale, lengthen up. And exhale, swan dive forward. Inhale, come up halfway. And exhale, step the right foot back this time. Back heel comes down so the back foot's at a 45-degree angle. And find your way back into warrior one on the left side. So here again, the focus is squaring the hips toward the front of the mat. Back thigh lifting up away from the mat and grounding into the back edge of the back foot. Once you've got that, you can begin to bend a little deeper into the front knee. Good, and then lengthen through the arms. And just settling in here. Good, we'll heel toe that front foot coming into our warrior two position. So the back foot is even with the back edge of the mat. You can bend into that front knee, right over again the second to third toe on the foot. Arms lengthen out, lengthening up through the crown. And breathing. Letting the breath be the anchor, the pulse through the whole of the practice, the highs and the lows. If you're looking for a gazing point, you can, again, gaze down toward the mat for more grounding. Traditionally, we look right over that front middle finger. So maybe that feels good today. Then we're going to flip the palm up and come into reverse warrior on the left side this time. Lengthening up through that left side body, reaching up toward the ceiling, keeping the neck long. And then exhale, coming into side angle. So maybe that left hand comes to the outside of the left ankle. The right arm comes around to the front. Shoulder plugs in and you can begin to lengthen through that right side body. Maybe you find that one side is more flexible, more open than the other. That's incredibly common. And again, if you want to back off, you can place the back hand on the hip, this left forearm right on the left thigh. You're still getting that nice twisting action in the torso and you can still lengthen. So once you feel steady, lengthen through that right arm once again. Good, and coming into triangle from here. So maybe you slide that front foot back just a little bit. And maybe you want to reach for a block, placing it on the outside of the left ankle. And slowly straightening this left leg, but not locking the knee out. And then twisting from the hips to open your chest and lengthen through the top arm. And watch here that the head doesn't move toward the shoulder. It tends to want to droop. Keeping it nice and vertical or even parallel with the mat. And you know where we're going from here, so looking forward, bringing that back hand to the hip, bending into the front knee and coming into half moon. So you can move nice and slow And maybe you stay here today. If you want to gently begin to open up that top hip, you can play with that. Maybe the chest follows, the gaze follows, and maybe you extend that top arm. And maybe you fall out of it 20 times, and that is perfectly fine. It's a good practice in not being so serious with ourselves. Good, and bringing that top arm back down, sliding the block out of the way and coming into your standing split on the left side. So walking the chest toward the shin, and then maybe you lift up through that back foot just a little bit more, really stretching into those left hamstrings. Good, and then walking that back foot forward, inhaling halfway, and exhale, fold. Inhaling, coming up halfway, and exhale, rising all the way up, reaching up, gathering all that energy and placing it in the heart, placing it in the womb space. Good. I'm going to turn to face you and take a wide-legged stance. So just as wide as feels comfortable for you today. And then we're going to take the hands behind the back, clasping the hands together. And then inhale, lengthen up. And exhale, fold forward. You can keep a gentle bend in the knees here, rocking the weight to the inner edges of the feet. Oh yeah. And letting the head move down toward the mat. Good. Not forcing those hands forward. Just letting them find a natural stopping point and breathing with it there. So this is not only a nice wide opening for the pelvic muscles, but also an immune booster. Good, and keeping a gentle bend in the knees, slowly rolling yourself back up to standing. Good, and then we'll face the front of the mat and come to a seated position. Move that out of the way. So first we'll come into Baddha Konasana, butterfly pose. So you'll notice this is very pelvic focused. The pelvic area is what we're working with a lot today. Opening that space up, clearing it out, and nurturing it so that the uterine lining can build once again and we can move toward inner summer to our fullest. So maybe you pedal the knees here. Make sure that the movements haven't become like rigid and stuck. Just allow some fluidity, some flow. And then you can find stillness. Maybe you pull the heels toward the pelvic bone, or maybe they need to stay a little further away today. Either way is perfectly fine. And then we'll inhale, lengthen here, and exhale, begin to fold forward. Good, and pay attention to where the back wants to start to round. And then just back up like 2 steps and stay there. Lengthen through the spine and breathe. Returning to deeper breaths here, and breathing into the back body, replenishing the kidneys and the adrenals. And if you find that your forehead can't quite make it to the mat, maybe you place a block or a pillow or a blanket out in front of you so that you can receive that support. Good. Keeping this more inward focus as you slowly come out of the pose. We're going to come into Janu Shirshasana. So extending the left leg first and bringing the right foot to the inner thigh of the left leg. Knee is about 90 degrees out. And lengthening up over that left leg and then begin to fold forward. So we're getting the benefits here, the calming mind benefits of a forward fold, while also getting a bit of a hip opener in that right hip. And just a little bit of a twist coming over the left side. So there's a lot happening in this pose. And here again, if the neck is getting stiff from folding and you can't quite reach the shin, you can place a block or a pillow or a blanket right where the forehead is and support it in that way. Good, and slowly coming out of that, extending the right leg. You can shake the legs out a little bit. And then we'll move into bending the left leg into Janu Shirshasana on the right side. So left foot is coming to the right inner thigh. Knee is bent about 90 degrees, but if it's not fully there, that's perfectly okay. And also know that if you're feeling any pain in the hip or the knee, you can also place a block underneath the knee to support it in that way. Squaring over the right leg, inhaling, lengthen, and exhale, begin to fold forward over the right leg, right shin. And breathing with it. So when you find kind of that stopping place in the body, maybe you inhale and lengthen through the spine, and exhale, fold just a bit deeper. Again, not pushing, honoring the body's limits. But just finding gentle, fluid movement, keeping the pose alive and dynamic. Good, and slowly walking yourself back up, extending the left leg, shaking it out. I'm going to move into a couple of supine poses, some inversions. So have your block or your pillow ready. Bend the knees and slowly roll down onto your back. Good. So for this first one, we're going to take a bridge pose. We're going to keep it super gentle and low for the first one. So hands can be placed right by the hips. You can actually hang on to the outer corners of the mat, the outer edge of the mat if that supports you. Or as we move up, feel free to clasp your hands under the back. So feeling the low back on the mat, feeling the feet planted firmly, making contact with the floor beneath you. Keeping the knees parallel, and on an inhale, begin to lift the hips, the low back, the upper back. And you can begin to slide the shoulders underneath you. Maybe they clasp underneath you. And this is a very energizing pose, but it can be a little too much if we're feeling fatigued. So feel free to take it lower. You can also take a block and place it underneath the sacrum for a more restorative, supportive inversion. So just find what feels good in this moment in your body. Maybe you walk the shoulders just a little bit deeper underneath you, really letting that heart space open. Here the throat and the chest almost touch, and you can think about the chakras, the energy centers, your heart wisdom coming into vocal or creative expression through the throat chakra. Good, and then we'll lift up off of the block if you were using it and slowly roll down onto the back. Feel free to hug the knees in, support that lower back, gently rock from side to side. We're going to set up for one more inversion. We're going to do shoulder stand. So I'm going to rock up to show you how to set up for that. And this is one that you're probably going to want to watch first before you just jump in if you haven't done it before. So we really want to protect the neck, especially that arch in the cervical spine. We don't want any pressure there. We want all the pressure under the shoulders. So I'm just setting up the blanket, fringes away from my neck, and making sure that that C7, kind of that really bony part of the spine in the upper spine, the neck, is off, right off of the edge of the blanket. I'm going to lengthen through the legs. Again, hands can be right by the hips, hanging onto the outer edges of the mat, wherever you feel most stable. Then you're going to inhale, lift the legs up, and extend straight up. So maybe you get to about here. That's perfectly fine. Place the hands on the hips and breathe here. Maybe you find that you're able to lift a little higher. The shoulders can come underneath you a little more. And you lengthen up through the legs. So wherever you find yourself today, just make sure that you're not forcing anything. You're breathing with the body. But doing poses like this are incredibly healing for the pelvis to move the energy the opposite way. And this pose is also really powerful for thyroid function, which is so important for women's health. Good, just a couple more breaths here. Keep lengthening through the toes, squeezing the thighs together. And to come down, we're going to actually let the toes come over the head and then roll down. And from here, once the hips touch down, place the hands under the hips. We're going to come into fish pose. So hands are right under the hips, the elbows are down on the mat beneath you, and then the head is moving toward the mat. So opening up everything we just compressed and allowing new blood, new oxygen, fresh energy to move through those spaces. And as you're ready, you can slowly lengthen through the spine, bringing the head up, walking the elbows out from underneath you, and lying flat on the back. We'll bend the knees, crossing the right knee over the left, sliding your hips to the left, and then exhaling both knees to the right. Coming into a gentle twist. Aiming to keep that left shoulder down on the mat, so if you need a blanket beneath you like I have, please go ahead and set that up for yourself. You can keep the spine lengthening straight, or you can turn the neck toward the left hand for a deeper stretch. Good, and bringing the gaze back up to the ceiling, bringing the legs back up, uncrossing them, and just re-lengthening out through the spine. Good, and then we'll cross the left knee over the right and slide the hips toward the right, and lift the knees up and move them toward the left. Good. And just softening here. Rather than forcing the knees down toward the floor, let gravity do the work for you. Just get soft and heavy. You can keep your gaze up toward the ceiling or turn toward the right. And just find what feels good in this moment. Good, coming back up to center, uncrossing the knees. And just take a moment here, maybe you hug the knees in, gently rock from side to side, and use this moment as a check-in before our final resting pose. See if there's anything else that the body is asking for, any final adjustments, any final poses. And when you're ready, you can begin to lengthen the legs out. Good. Shoulders underneath you, palms facing up for receptivity. You can place them down for greater groundingness and connecting to the earth energy. You can also place them somewhere on the body that's needing a little bit more nourishment right now. As you begin to settle in, allow yourself to release the practice now. The work is done, and this is your opportunity just to absorb all of the benefits of your practice. Physical, mental, emotional, energetic, spiritual. Let that new wisdom that you created move through you fully without needing to do anything. Just watching it. Breathing deep, full belly breaths. And as you breathe, take a moment to connect to the vibration that you would love to experience. So maybe that's love, gratitude, joy, clarity, peace. Hold that frequency in your body. Hold that frequency in your mind. And watch it become your reality. Resting here for a few more moments, because in the fall is a time of learning how to rest after the activity of summer. So in Shavasana we can practice resting and being still more than what feels comfortable, more than we think we should. And as you lay here in the stillness, it gives the body time and space to unwind, to release layers of tension that may have been there for days, weeks, years. Our bodies are self-healing, given the right tone and frequency, time and space. So fully embrace this as a holy moment, a healing moment. Trust that all of your needs are met. And when you feel ready, you can begin to wiggle the fingers and the toes. Bring some gentle movement back into the body. Extend the arms overhead. Lengthen through the fingers and the toes. And gently roll onto your right side. We roll to the right side so that we don't compress the heart space. Pausing here for a moment. And using the arms to press yourself back up to a seated position at the center of your mat. Maybe you sit up on a blanket to support your hips. And take a moment just to check out those hips and see if they feel a little different than when we first began the practice together. Ground through the sit bones, lengthen through the spine. Bringing the palms back to the heart center, back to our space of innate intelligence. Bowing to that intelligence and taking a moment just to see if there are any final messages or insights that want to come through you right now. Cultivating the practice of hearing the voice of your intuition. And perhaps you'd like to dedicate the fruits of this practice to someone you love who could really use that extra energy, or a place in the world, or the world as a whole. Just sending this loving energy out and watching it build and build and build. Thank you so much for sharing this practice with me. If you have any questions about the practice, any of the poses, please feel free to comment below. If there are any women's yoga issues that you'd like me to cover in a practice, please let me know. I would love to do that. If you'd like a pose for cramps or heavy flow or scanty flow, for PMS symptoms, for other phases of the cycle, for other aspects of each phase of the cycle. There's a whole world that we can explore together. So if there's something that's really piquing your interest and you'd like a practice created around it, please reach out to me. I'll include my contact information below in the description. If you enjoy these practices, connecting more with the divine feminine, embracing your womanness, please subscribe, as I will be putting out more videos. Thank you so much. Namaste.